Are you one of those drivers who hits the brakes a little harder than you need to, or do you drive over the speed limit to catch up with traffic flow? Well, some of those habits could cost you when it comes to insurance renewal time, and that is thanks to some of your phone apps. The New York Times is reporting that apps like Life 360, My Radar, and Gas Buddy share driving data with some insurance companies. Those insurance companies can then treat that like a driving score, much like a credit score that could potentially affect your rates. A lot to talk about here. Joining us now is one of the world's leading privacy experts, Ann Cavoukian. Ann, thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure, Melanie. Thank you.
In reading this article, this might be very eye-opening for a lot of people thinking, well, this can't happen to me. Let's enlighten a little bit.
Well, of course, because you never consider the potential what ifs. What if somehow your personally identifiable data got into the hands of unauthorized third parties and you say, oh, no, I just consented to the insurance company using this, but not giving it to others. Well, with due respect, if you don't have a written form of the consent that you're signing, you have no idea the potential for abuse in terms of unauthorized access to your data. You just have to be so explicit. And right now, that doesn't take place.
The word consent, I actually wrote it down and I put an asterisk here because in 2024, when we're looking at something like this, a company might say, but we did tell you that you consented to it in the fine print. We did reach out to the Insurance Bureau of Canada to see if this is applicable to Canadians. And they did say the use of telematics, that data, that's not new, but it does require expressed consent of the insured. And depending on the jurisdiction, it can either be used against you or used in a positive way or against you. Now, I don't think everyone necessarily knows that. So as you talk about the written expressed consent, what sort of things do you need to see in front of your face to be able to say yay or nay?
I always look to see what they're going to do with my information. I am consenting to the use of my information with whoever I'm dealing with that particular insurer or whoever the company is that I'm dealing with. But that's all I'm consenting to have my personal information used by that company for this particular purpose, explicit purpose, full stop. It shouldn't go beyond that in terms of secondary uses of your data that could be used for purposes you never contemplated and that could potentially be shared with third parties that you haven't authorized. So you have to be so explicit.
And one of the concerns as well is what about the accuracy of
Oh,
this data? And that is a whole other level to this because you might say, well, it showed that I braked 100 times in this, and then how do you prove that? How do you get the paperwork to back this up?
well, exactly. How do you get the accuracy? And more before the accuracy, how do you get transparency to be able to gain access to what you just said, to that level of data? And then what are they doing with that data, which may not be accurate? The lack of transparency is astounding. And then the lack of accuracy, potential use of data in a context it was never intended to be used in.
So let's talk two things. Number one, how should the government potentially be stepping in here? What should they be telling consumers on what they should be aware of or looking out for, or perhaps some legislation that should be put into place?
And I think even before that, what should governments be saying to companies who are collecting this information? Because individuals, they're new to this. They want to sign up for insurance and they say, oh yeah, I think I consented to this. And they're not aware of the potential abuses that can arise with very broad consent that is being given. So I think governments should clarify very, very clearly with companies what the requirements are, how explicit they need to be with individuals in terms of the level of detail, in terms of the uses of their personal information. And then individuals, it's expecting too much for individuals to be aware of everything. There's far too much. But I always say make sure you get written consent. So don't just do it verbally or online. Get it in front of you and know what you're consenting to and negotiate with them if there's something you don't agree to, that this exceeds my expectations of consent.
And outside of these apps, at a simple level, should you be going in, looking at your settings, see how they're tracking? Because I don't think everyone, how many apps do you have on your phone? And it's easy to, glaze over, but should you be going in and constantly checking your settings?
The problem is this. I agree with you, Melanie. You should be going in and constantly checking. But the reality is, people are busy. There are so many apps now, people simply don't have the time to continuously examine everything. So I'd like to put more of the responsibility, the burden on companies who are seeking your personally identifiable data, that they should be completely explicit with what they're going to do with it and how they're going to ideally protect it from unauthorized use by third parties. I want to put more pressure on companies than on individuals.
A really interesting conversation, and I do wish we even had more time with you. Ann Cavoukian, appreciate you just taking the time with us. This is just tip of the iceberg when it comes to this conversation. Thank you.
My pleasure. Anytime. Thank you.